Good afternoon. I welcome you all to this session of fluid mechanics. In last class, we were discussing the force, hydrostatic force exerted on a plane surface submerged in a static expanse of fluid. And what we have finally concluded, that if there is a free surface of fluid and a plane surface, plane inclined surface is submerged in this expanse of fluid, then the pressure forces is exerted perpendicular to the plane surface at each and every point, okay? And the pressure intensity at any point, as we know, that it is equal to rho times g times the height of that point or the depression of that point, that is the vertical depth of that point from the free surface. So the pressure intensity varies at different points depending upon their depression from the free surface. And finally, we recognize that the total hydrostatic force due to these hydrostatic pressures on any one side of the plane surface is equal to the pressure intensity at the center of area of the surface times the total area. That means it is equivalently at the same area if it is placed horizontally at a depth equal to the depth of the center of area of the inclined surface, then the pressure which could have been exerted, that is the uniform pressure, equal to rho times g times the height from the free surface, that is the height of the centroid for the inclined surface. So therefore, we are concluded that for any inclined surface, the total pressure force is equal to the area of the surface times the pressure intensity at the centroid of the area or center of area. And we also recognized another fact, that the pressure center, that is the point of action of these resultant pressure forces, passes through a point which is below the center of area. Below the center of area, that means it is at a more depth than that of the center of area, which is obvious because pressures are increasing with the depth. And the center of pressure can be found out by a simple expression, that the moment of area about an axis which we take as the intersection of the plane surface with the free surface, we take an axis perpendicular to this. So moment of area of this surface about this axis divided by the area and the coordinates of the center of pressure. So this we recognized in the last class. Now today we will be discussing the hydrostatic pressure forces or hydrostatic forces on submerged curved surface. If the surface is curved, then how we will find out the hydrostatic pressure force. Now let us see in general here, let us first write hydrostatic force on curved surface, on a curved surface. Well, now let us see here in general a curved surface. So this is a curved surface, you can see, which in general has got curvature in both the directions. So a general curved surface which has got curvature in both the direction, it is immersed in a fluid whose free surface is this one, in an expanse of fluid. Now in this case we consider a three-dimensional system. Because of this curvature in two directions, we consider the axis OX, OY at the free surface. That means this XY plane, coordinate plane, is at the free surface, and OZ axis we consider vertically downward. Now it is true that at each and every point on the surface, the pressure force intensity or the magnitude is equal to rho times the density of the fluid, which is constant in case of liquid, times the g times its vertical depth from the free surface, which we denote by the z coordinate. That means rho g z. But the difference between this with that of a plane surface is that each and every point the force is normal to the surface, which are not parallel. In a case of a plane surface, what happened? That force at, for example, there could have been a plane surface, the force on each elemental area is normal to the surface and they are parallel to each other. So therefore, a scalar summation of the elemental force was possible, which we did by simple integration of an elemental force throughout the area. But in case of a curved surface, since the normal at each end point of the surface, which is the direction of the pressure forces, changes because of the curvature, a simple scalar summation That means a simple integration will not be possible. So therefore, the general procedure of mechanics, simple basic mechanics, is that in that case we will have to take an elemental force and we will have to fix certain reference coordinate directions in which we will take the components and sum up the components in a particular directions. Okay, and we will find out the components of the resultant forces in those directions and then again vectorially sum up the components to find out the resultant force. It is as simple as like this from elementary mechanics. So now we concentrate here, we see to do that we recognize an elemental area dA which is at a vertical depth z. We just project this area here and this is shown here, that is the z in the yz plane. So z represents the vertical height or depression from the free surface dA, from the free surface of this area dA. Now you see the hydrostatic force due to pressure is acting on this surface. If we consider the force acting by the liquid on this side, I have told only one side we will consider, other side we will consider as if open to atmosphere, then this pressure force is normal to this area dF. Now this force can be resolved into three directions with respect to this frame of reference OX, OY and OZ. Accordingly, dFx is the x direction, x component, dFy is the y component and dFj is the z component. Now, if we assume that the normal to this surface makes an angle alpha with the x coordinates, makes an angle beta, let this is beta, this big angle with the y, sorry, not this one, I am sorry, that means this one, not this one, this we make this normal to this with y axis is beta and normal to this with z axis, that means this angle as gamma. That means alpha, beta and gamma are the angles made by the normal to this area with x axis, with y axis, that means this angle, and with z axis. Then we can tell simply that dfx is equal to what? dfx is equal to df. Now df is dA into rho g z. If we consider that this area is at a vertical depth z from the free surface, so simply rho g z times what we can write? dA cos alpha. Very good. What is dfy? Rho g z dA cos beta, and what is dfz? That is rho g z dA cos gamma. Now you see this dA cos alpha physically represents the projected area of dA on yz plane, that we denote as dAx. That means it is the projected area of elemental area dA on a plane whose perpendicular is x, that means on yz plane. So therefore we can replace dA cos alpha by dAx and we can write dfx is equal to rho gz dAx. Similarly, we can write dfy as rho gz. Similarly, A cos beta will be the projected area of dA on a plane whose perpendicular is the y direction, that means it is on the plane xz. So that we represents that dAy, and similarly dfz will represent rho gz times dA cos gamma, which is the projected area of dA on a xy plane, that means the plane perpendicular to z direction, which is shown here. This area is dAz. dAy area is not shown here, is difficult to show in this two-dimensional paper. Now you see that if we now integrate, now the different direction component forces of this elementary force F is made. Now we can make a scalar sum. That means now we can tell Fx as integration of dfx, double integration, because this is equal to rho g z dx. So therefore you see rho g z dx, now you can recall this can be simply written considering a force on a plane surface, that this is rho g zc into ax. rho g is common. If you take rho g out, then the double integral z dx is made over the entire area Ax, where Ax represents the projectional area of this entire curved surface area A. That means it is the projectional area on yz plane, that is the plane perpendicular to x axis of the entire curved surface area Ax, and Zc represents the center of area of that projectional area. Okay, or you can tell the projection of the center of area on the curved surface on yz plane, both are same. So therefore we see simply Fx is equal to, again I am writing, is very interesting result, rho g Zc Ax. In a similar fashion, I can write Fy by integrating this dFy as rho gz, okay, day double integration, which becomes is equal to rho gz c, rho gz c into Ay, where Zc is again the center of area, the vertical distance or the coordinate of the center of area projected on xz plane, and Ay is the projected area of the entire area or entire curved surface on the xz plane, that is the plane perpendicular to y. And similarly, we can write dfz is equal to integration of rho g z dz. Now here we stop, we cannot write anything more for here. Now two very interesting result now comes out from this expression for Fx and this expression for Fy. Now we see, therefore the x component of the hydrostatic force on the entire area is equivalent to the hydrostatic force on a vertical surface, vertical plane surface which is parallel to yz plane, and area of the surface equals to the projected area of this curved surface on the yz plane. Similarly, the y component of force on this curved surface is equal to the hydrostatic force of a plane surface area which is parallel to xz plane, and whose area is equal to the projectional area of the surface on xz plane. Therefore, we can conclude from here that the hydrostatic force in any horizontal direction, the hydrostatic force in any horizontal direction of a curved surface equals to the hydrostatic force exerted on a plane surface which is perpendicular to that direction and whose area is equal to the projected area of the plane on that particular plane perpendicular to this direction. So again I am telling, the conclusion is like that, if there is a curved surface, sometimes it helps us in solving problems, that if there is a curved surface submerged in a liquid, then the hydrostatic pressure force in any horizontal direction, it may be x, it may be y, any way you can orient in any horizontal direction, is equal to the force on a plane surface whose area is equal to the projected area of that surface in a plane perpendicular to the direction. That means if we consider a plane perpendicular to the direction, the horizontal direction in which we are finding out the net component of the total hydrostatic pressure force on the curved surface, then if we imagine a plane perpendicular to that direction, then this is equal to the hydrostatic pressure force on a plane surface which is the projection of this curved surface on that plane which is perpendicular to that horizontal direction. So this is a very important conclusions we get. Now obviously if we now want to define the center of pressure for this x component of force separately, we can find out P, which is given by Zp. If we consider this as the centroid, so this will be lying on the same line, vertical line, because I have told that it may not be displaced, that means Yc and Yp will be equal, because for a plane surface the centroidal axis or the axis to the center of area is such that the areas are, the moment of the areas on both sides are 0 about this, and since the hydrostatic pressure force does not vary with, hydrostatic pressure forces vary only with the area, so that this is not displaced in along this line from the center of area. But this is displaced here because the hydrostatic pressure forces varies with the depth, that we have already recognized earlier. So if we that way find that P is the center of pressure, with a vertical depression or coordinate Zp, then we know from our earlier discussion that Zp in this case is given by this integral. We can write I about this is the y and z plane, so this will be about the y axis, y divided by ax into zc. That means the moment of area of the projected area on yz plane about the oy axis divided by this total area ax, that is the projected area of the curved surface in the yz plane, divided by the area projected area ax times the zc. That of course we can change again by parallel axis theorem by transforming this second moment of area about oy axis to another axis parallel to oy through c. That you can do as well in case similar as we did in case of plane surface. So this is all right. Similar way we can find out the pressure center for, that is the point of application of Fy, by applying the same equation, that is the second moment of area of the projected area on xz plane. That means that will be Ay about x axis divided by this. That means I can write this, I can write this similarly, that Zp point of application of Fy as integration of integration Iyy, no, that is not integration, I am sorry, this is Iyy, that takes the integration, I am sorry. So I can write this way, that this is Ix, because this is x, Ixx of the area Ay times the Zc. That means where Ay is the area, projected area of this surface on xz plane, and its second moment of area about this x axis divided by the area itself Zc. That means we will treat as simply as pressure forces on plane surface, which are the projected surfaces on yz and xz plane. Now what about the vertical force? Now you see the vertical force component is this. This is not dfz, this is fz. So fz, now let us write this, fz is integration of dfz, that means rho g z dz. So now what is z dz? You see that if this is z daz, I am sorry, daz. Now what is z daz? daz is the projectional area on xy plane, which means that if we consider a prismatic fluid element over dA up to the free surface, daz is the cross sectional area. That means the projected area, that means the area perpendicular to the z directions, projected area on xy plane. Therefore this quantity simply represents rho g. If we take out this z daz, simply represents what? Volume. Very good. That means dV first I write, this is the d v cut. I will use always v cut as volume, because v will be using for velocity afterwards. So this is the elemental volume of this prismatic fluid element. So this is simply rho gV. That means we can tell that the hydrostatic component, jet component of the hydrostatic pressure force over an elemental area is equal to the weight of the fluid above that elemental area up to the free surface, and for the entire surface it is the weight of the fluid that is contained in the region vertically above the surface up to the free surface. That means if we make the vertical projections from these surfaces to the up to the free surface, then the bulk of the liquid which is contained within this vertical projection from the free surface up from the curved surface to the free surface, the weight of that liquid is equal to the hydrostatic jet component of the hydrostatic force. So therefore next is that this force, the point of action of this force is through the center of volume of this bulk of fluid, which is contained vertically above the surface up to the free surface. And it is little complicated to find out the point of application. So, resultant force is very simple, you just vectorially add Fx square plus Fy square plus Fz square. But the point of application of this force is difficult in a sense that we can find out the force Fx direction and we can find out the application of Fy direction, and the meeting point, midpoint we know, and if we draw a vertical line through it, then we will see this, the actual force will pass through this point, which will also go through the center of volume. So, this I will explain while solving a problem. So, however, we can find out that this is the resultant force whose direction can be found out if I know the magnitudes of Fx, Fy, Fz, and whose value, the magnitude is found out in this way by vector summation of Fx, Fy and Fz, and whose point of application is found out by finding out the point of application of all the three forces. So, next I summarize the thing again by telling this: for a curved surface, the net hydrostatic pressure forces are found out first by taking its components in referred directions. In any horizontal direction, the hydrostatic pressure force is equal to the force exerted on a plane surface, which is the projected surface on a plane which is perpendicular to that direction. That means, if we want to find out the hydrostatic pressure force in x direction, we will take the projection of this curved surface on yz plane, that is the plane perpendicular to x direction, and treat the plane surface, that is the projected surface, in a plane surface in yz plane as the vertical surface, and then we find out the hydrostatic pressure force in that plane, and that will represent the hydrostatic pressure force in the horizontal direction, x direction or y direction for the curved surface. And the vertical component, if we take one of the coordinate axes in the vertical direction, obviously we will have to take the vertical component of the pressure force is equal to the total weight of the fluid, bulk of the fluid, which is contained within a region created by vertically projecting from the surface up to the free surface. That means, that is the weight of the liquid vertically above the surface up to the free surface, the bulk of the liquid that is contained. The weight of that is equal to the hydrostatic jet component of the hydrostatic pressure forces. Okay. So, this way we can find out the pressure force in a curved surface. Now, few things I must tell you. This is all about the pressure forces on a curved surface. There may be some situations where the free surface may not be defined properly. For example, this is a case that in a expanse of water, there is a gate, carved gate or surface like that. Now, this is the free surface which may not be extended in this direction. Now, what happens? This is not a submerged surface, but see that each and every point, this pressure is atmospheric pressure P0, but each and every point there is a pressure force, each and every point there is a pressure force due to the height of this. So, there is a net pressure force in this direction that we know, but to apply this formula we can do it analytically, but if we want to find out the jet component of the hydrostatic pressure force, and if we try to apply this concept that it is the weight of the liquid above this surface, if we are told to find out only this part, that what is the magnitude of vertical component of the hydrostatic force, then what we do is common sense that we take an imaginary free surface. That means we extend the free surface in there as if it is being submerged with this as free surface. Same thing, we can find out the submerged free surface hydrostatic force means if this is the surface, I just take a projection. So, this is the weight of this liquid. So, from geometry if I can find out the weight of this liquid easily, I can tell this is the vertical component of the hydrostatic forces. Sometimes the situation is like that, there is a pressurized container, there is no free surface, a pressurized container and there is a gate. This is a pressurized container, this is a pressurized container, okay, this is a pressurized container where the fluid is at some pressure. So, the pressure intensity varies with its depth, and here at the top surface the pressure is P1. So, pressure is here P1, but at this point the pressure is P1 plus the hydrostatic pressure due to height. So this is a container. What is the force acting on this? So you can go with the analytical expression by integration, but if we have to use this concept, if we are told to find out the component of vertical component of the hydrostatic forces, then what we do? This we cannot treat as an submerged surface below the free surface of the water, but we can transfer that by imagining a free surface whose here we will go up to a vertical height. Is very simple. P1 H is equal to P1 by rho g. That means we create some height which is equal to H P1 by rho g and make it, that is as if this is the free surface, as if this is the free surface, and we consider that this is immersed in the free surface. Then what is the hydrostatic jet component of the hydrostatic pressure forces? This volume of the liquid, this volume of the weight of this volume. That means we can create a free surface and consider it as if it is submerged on this free surface. So only thing is that the direction will be like this. If this is a free surface and it is submerged, then if we consider the force on this surface, this side, it will be in this direction. Here, because of this pressurized chamber, it will be in this direction. So this will be the, because pressure here will be this pressure plus this height, which will be same as this vertical height. That means to extrapolate from the pressure a free surface, this is known as imaginary free surface concept. Sometimes we have to make to find out the vertical component of forces easily if we feel that geometrically it is easier to find out the weight of the liquid vertically above the free above the curved surface up to the free surface, then an imaginary free surface, depending upon the situation we can think of. Okay. Now we come to the next part, buoyancy. What is buoyancy? Now I come to buoyancy. Buoyancy. Probably this you have heard at your school level. So there will be a little recapitulation of your things which you have done at your school level, buoyancy. Now you know that if a body is totally or partially submerged, if totally submerged or partially immersed, then the body experiences in a liquid or even in a fluid, body experiences upward thrust. Where from this upward thrust comes? Now this phenomena is known as buoyancy, and this upward force that a body is experienced, we are also experienced because we are totally submerged, that immersed in fluid air. So we are always experiencing a upward thrust. So it is a fact that a body, if it is immersed in a fluid, then it experiences, totally immersed or partially immersed, it experiences an upward force. This phenomena is buoyancy. Probably at a very little age, that means in the class 7 or 8 level we have read this, and this phenomena is known as buoyancy and the force is known as buoyant force. So where from this upward force comes? Please tell, where from this net upward force comes? Where from it comes? Where from this force comes? Tell me the force comes from a force concept, not because of another physics. Then I will ask why that physics creates a force. Force comes from some force concept. Why that force comes? This is nothing but the distribution net resultant of the hydrostatic pressure forces, nothing else. The body is submerged or partially immersed, so there is hydrostatic pressure forces distribution around the body, and the net effect of these hydrostatic pressure forces is a vertical upward force, which is the buoyant force. It comes from the distribution of hydrostatic pressure force. Now let us see what happened. That let us consider a free surface of water. Free surface, and let us consider a body like this. Let us consider a body totally immersed or submerged body. So what will happen? The pressure forces will act on the body like this, P. Though I am writing it as P, but don't misunderstand that this P is same everywhere, because this P depends upon its height from the free surface. So on the surface of the body, pressure forces are experienced because of the fluid, that is the surface force we have discussed. Now you tell me, the common sense tells that the resultant force due to these surface force pressure forces in any horizontal direction becomes 0. This is because this is obviously found out, this balances each other, that means horizontal force is 0. Now if we apply our earlier knowledge that the resultant force component in any horizontal direction on a curved surface is equal to the projected area on a plane perpendicular to that direction. If we apply that concept, now this curved surface is a closed curved surface for a body, and whose projected area in any plane is 0. So therefore, the concept tells that the net hydrostatic force in any horizontal direction is 0, but it is not so in the vertical direction. Why? You see, obviously vertical direction, the pressure force at this point and pressure force at these points can never balance, because they differ in the height, because this is Z, pressure increases with the increase in Z. Now if we take a prismatic liquid whose cross sectional area is dAz, and in such a way that this point, the upper surface is at a height from the, or a depth from the free surface Z1, while this lower surface of the prismatic fluid is at a depth Z2, then we can write that the pressure, vertical component of the pressure forces on this prismatic element of the surface of the body is, on this surface, is rho g Z1 into dAz. Similarly, this is acting, this is the dF1. So I can write dF1. Similarly, the upward force at the bottom base of this prism in the vertical direction is dF2, which is equal to dF2 rho g. Is very simple. You have done earlier, dAz. So therefore, this is more than this. So therefore, a net force acting dF2 minus dF1, let dF vertically upward in the prismatic fluid is rho g Z2 minus Z1 into dAz. Now this becomes equal to rho g Z dAz, where Z is the height, that means this height of the prismatic liquid. That means this is simply rho g Z dV. So therefore, if we integrate, then we get Fz is equal to triple integration, that means over the volume rho g dV, that means we get rho gV. So therefore, we get the idea that the net hydrostatic force, pressure force in any horizontal direction is 0, but in the vertical direction there is a force which acts upward in the body, whose magnitude equal to rho g times the volume of the solid body, the entire volume of the solid body. Okay. Now you see that when solid body exists here under submerged condition, that means it has displaced the liquid in this portion. So therefore, we can tell that the same volume of the liquid has to be displaced by the solid, so that solid makes its space. So that is why this V is sometimes referred to as displaced volume. Displaced, that means the volume displaced, and displaced volume always will be volume of the body immersed in the fluid. In case of a submerged body which is totally immersed in the fluid, this displaced volume is total volume, because it has to occupy its total volume. But when the fluid is partially submerged, that partially immersed, not fully immersed, then this displaced volume is the volume of the solid that is within the fluid, that means that part of the volume. So this is referred technically as displaced volume. So therefore, we come to the conclusion that the buoyant force, that is the buoyancy force, which is the net upward force, and it is as a consequence of the hydrostatic pressure force surrounding on the surfaces of the body, is equal in magnitude to the weight of the displaced volume of the fluid, weight of the displaced volume of the fluid by the solid, or you can tell it is equal to the weight of the fluid whose volume corresponds to the volume immersed in the fluid, volume of the solid immersed in the fluid. That means in case of a submerged volume, total volume of the solid; in case of a partially immersed solid, it is the volume that is within the fluid. That means it is equal to the volume displaced, weight of the fluid whose volume equal to the displaced volume of the fluid by the solid. And this phenomena was discovered by Archimedes, which is the starting point of the fluid mechanics, and that is why this phenomena is known as Archimedes principle. This phenomena is known as, let us write with pride the name of this great man, Archimedes principle. Archimedes principle. So this is the buoyancy. Now we come to the equilibrium. Now we will discuss the floating equilibrium of submerged bodies. Submerged bodies. First we consider equilibrium of submerged bodies. Now, if a body is submerged in a liquid, so we see a vertical upward force, that is the buoyancy force, whose magnitude is the weight of the total weight of the fluid, whose volume is equal to the volume of the solid, that is acting upward. What is another force acting? That is the weight of the body. So, one thing you will have to write, equilibrium of submerged unconstrained bodies. That means the body should not be constant, otherwise there is no other force acting, the body is kept free. Another force, which is another force acting, is the weight vertically downward. There is no other force, because in a static fluid there is no friction force. So, only the pressure forces which gives rise to buoyancy forces, and that is the weight. So, therefore, if the weight is more than the buoyancy force, the body will go down, sink and sink. So, there is no equilibrium, it will only rest if there is a surface, solid surface, where the body can be kept at rest because of the reaction force exerted by the solid surface will balance the net value of the weight minus the buoyancy. But if it so happens the density of the fluid, the density of the solid and the volume of the body is such that buoyant force equals to the weight of the body. That means weight of the body equals to the buoyancy, that means the density is same. It can only happen if the densities are same. In that case, what happens? The weight and the buoyancy are equal in magnitude, and if they become collinear, and if they become also collinear, that means vertical with the same point of application on the same vertical line, then the body will be in perfect equilibrium condition under submerged state. Okay. So, therefore, the condition equilibrium of submerged bodies, here we can write unconstrained, that means free, that means only weight and buoyancy is acting. So, now you see what happens. Let us consider a body which is like this. Let us consider a body like this. Now, the condition of equilibrium is that the weight acting from its CG, let this is its CG, and buoyancy force acting through the center of buoyancy B, let us call B and let us call it as G, they have to be equal, W is equal to B, and they should be collinear. So, they should be in the same vertical line, but there may be a displacement between G and B along the vertical line. G may be upward than the B, or maybe down to B, that depends upon the distribution of mass, relative distribution of mass and weight. If weight is uniformly distributed, mass is uniformly distributed throughout the volume, then of course G and B coincides, but not necessarily in general they have to be coincident. But even if they are not coincident, but they should be collinear. So, this is the condition of equilibrium of a submerged body. Now, as you know, in mechanics there are three types of equilibrium. One is stable equilibrium, another is neutral equilibrium, another is unstable equilibrium. So, we will discuss the stable, unstable and neutral equilibrium in the next class. So, this is the condition that the weight and the buoyancy force have to be collinear for equilibrium, but whether it will be stable equilibrium or unstable or neutral equilibrium we will discuss in the next class. That there are three types of equilibrium, we will define these three classes of equilibrium as you already know in your mechanics. Then we will find the conditions under which the body will be in stable equilibrium under submerged condition, or neutral equilibrium, or in unstable equilibrium. The next class. Well, okay, thank you.